Welcome back to Open Line, everyone. We are talking about learning loss amid this pandemic here in Tennessee, and specifically here locally and with Metro Nashville Public Schools. 737+ if you would like to call in. Our guests, Sonya Thomas and John Little, both with Nashville PROPEL. We'll get back to them and talk about this special session. And basically, the big controversy is that Governor Lee and Penny Schwinn, our education commissioner, they really want kids to get back into school. And one line here is that I know the governor says, this is what he said, quote, "Here's the bottom line. You can't say follow the science and keep schools closed. You can't say I believe in public education and keep schools closed. And you can't say you're putting the needs of students first and keep schools closed. Kids do better in school. We know that. Parents know that. That's why I'm so proud of our districts who have kids in school. And to those who remain closed, I would offer this simple encouragement: follow the science." Now, he's referring to recent studies that suggests schools may not be playing as big a role in the spread of virus as many has feared early last year. But districts, this is not necessarily about the kids. We know that maybe it has not impacted younger people that much, but what about the teachers? We have really a problem with fully staffing schools, and teachers are quarantined. There aren't enough substitutes available. So let's dive into that a little bit as well. It's not as easy as just saying, okay, let's send them all back, right?
It's not just that easy. And when you think about MNPS and you think about Shelby County schools and you think about the population in which they serve, which are predominantly Black children, who have families who are dropping like flies. We're known to have disparities, and COVID is hitting our community the hardest. And so, you have superintendents or director of schools that have to make some decisions that are very hard. And they have to make those decisions based on whom they serve. And so good. Some schools have tried to go in, but I think we also have to be candid about that data. Some of these schools who have gone back in person have also had to go into quarantine. Right. And they've gone back and forth. And so we want parents to have the choice, but we want them to have an informed choice, right? And following the science, the science says right now that Tennessee is ranking the highest in COVID cases. So let's follow that science.
Right.
Let's follow that.
And we should point out, I mean, those who are opposed to this bill, this one bill that really wants to get, would basically withhold funding if you don't, within a certain amount of time, get your kids back into school. I mean, Shelby County schools in Metro Nashville, we're talking about nearly one fifth of the state's public school students. I mean, they are the largest, like you said. And we heard from Mayor Cooper today. We've heard from Joris Ray, the Shelby County School Superintendent, who are basically saying you shouldn't punish us for trying to be safe first. Right, John?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to take. First and foremost, we got to look after the safety, and I think Sonya added, just as we talk to our parents, right? Because we don't speak for the parents, we listen, and then we form our opinions. And what we realize that a lot of our families have grandparents who are helping raise their grandkids. And so when the grandkids go to school and bring back the virus, it's almost no coming back. I mean, even when you dig into the healthcare, a lot of the healthcare, that's why we needed, the Affordable Care Act, because the healthcare was not equitable. And so when we think about it, it's a valid point to make sure that our kids are safe. But we also got a plan for, it's not January, it's not February, but what does August look like? And I think one thing that we're realizing, where is the planning if we want to have a safe return? But if we never talk about it, if we keep fighting for it now and we don't plan for the future, we'll keep finding ourselves in these same positions.
All right, want to go to the phones? We have.
Another thing is,
go ahead, Sonya. Yeah, go ahead.
Another thing, I think John just said something that's profound. He said plan. And so if this is our plan to defund schools, basically, then I'm very worried. Where is the state in planning directly with these directors of schools and helping them to have a plan to open up the schools? That's what we're not seeing. So if that's our only plan, is to punish, we got to forget who it truly punishes: children.
Yeah.
Specifically, that new bill that I'm referring to, filed by the House Majority Leader, would require school districts to provide in-person instruction for at least 70 days this school year, and then the full 180 days in the next school year, or risk the state withholding funding. And for Shelby County, that would mean they'd have to reopen almost immediately for the rest of the semester. And in Metro Nashville, middle and high school students, like you said, your own daughter hasn't seen the inside of a classroom since last spring. So it really puts the pressure on those two. All right, let's go ahead and take our first call, and it's Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn, welcome.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
No problem.
And I appreciate the representatives there that you're talking with. And first of all, not only the students, but also the teachers and other supporting staff, because they're important too. And if they're not there in the class and they get sick, if they come back, you still won't have enough teachers, like you don't have enough substitutes. And the first thing Governor Lee needs to do is have a plan. Right now, it's fluctuating with the virus. They don't even know if they're going to have enough doses to give to the state of Tennessee. The next thing is, I'm very fortunate. I just retired about 2 years ago, and I'm able to help my grandson. Well, we're doing very well. I know everybody's not, and maybe everybody don't have that availability. But the thing is, people, I know in my grandson's school, that I will not name the school, that the parents took their children to other states where some of the states were very high in COVID. And then those students will come back and infect the teachers, the supporting staff, as well as students. Now, we can't control what the parents do, but the governor needs to know you cannot penalize these school systems because you want to make a point. Now, if he wants to make a point, then he needs to join Donald Trump. And that's all I got to say.
Carolyn, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Yeah, a lot of people are worried about the politicization, you know, of this instead of really kind of getting down to the nitty gritty. That bill that threatens to withhold funding. Talk a little bit about that. And already, I know your group is concerned about the inequities some of these school districts and underfunding that's already been in place, right?
Yep.
Yes. You know, we got to think about before COVID, our parents weren't receiving quality. And so when our parents think about going back to school, they think about the fact of they weren't receiving quality at first. So now we want to risk their lives for them to receive the same thing. And then you have other parents who are fighting to go back, maybe because they were receiving quality. And so I think people should have a choice. I just want to make sure that we're putting safety first, that we're making sure that everyone is safe. I mean, the young lady that just spoke, she talked about being a grandparent. And John just talked about how most of our families, they consist of a grandparent raising the children. So if that grandparent is infected, you take out a whole family.
Yeah.
And then we got children in foster care. So, I mean, we just really have to put things first. This is not about politics. I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 24 years. I've done CPR. I've seen somebody take their last breath, and I didn't ask them if they was Republican or Democrat, because it don't matter.
Yeah, I get it, no doubt. Earlier, John, you talked about looking ahead, like to August, and let's look ahead in the next couple of years. Where do you see your group? What will you be advocating for? Let's say, you know, fingers crossed that maybe in the fall we can start to see the districts really go back to in-class learning. Let's fingers crossed that the vaccination rollout is ramped up and that we flatten the curve and we're looking good in the fall. But we still have to address, whenever that happens, we have to address this issue of learning loss. That just seems like a huge mountain to climb. I mean, it's not just a little bit. I mean, some of these kids, when we look at reading and math proficiency, they are really falling behind. Is this a matter of repeating grades? Is it a matter of changing the curriculum? What do we do?
Yeah, this is a very, very serious topic. And what we realized that before the pandemic hit, our kids were not reading on grade level anyway. And so when the pandemic ends, we don't want to start the same way we ended. And that means we need to make sure our kids, like when we think about the learning loss, what systems are we putting in place? How are we making sure they're on grade level for reading and for math? When we think about a literacy bill that they're also proposing, like what does that really, are we truly teaching teachers how to teach reading? And so, because you ask yourself, we invest close to $1 billion in MMPS every year. And out of that $1 billion, only 16% of kids are reading on by the third grade or reading on grade level. So we have a problem. And so again, it's not a secret. What we want at Nashville PROPEL is an individualized learning plan, because my son is different from Sonya's daughter, and Sonya's daughter is different from your children. And we gotta look at where they are, not what grade level they're on. And so if they're behind, let's work with them to bring them up. If they're ahead of the game, let's work on growing them and making sure they get college credit by the time they graduate high school.
And when you say these individualized plans, what does that take? Does it take more teachers, more instructional staff? Does it take, what is that? How do we put that into action?
Yep, a lot of people, they fear it, and I'm gonna let Sonya jump into it, but an individualized learning plan is already in place in our districts with certain students. What we're looking to is to expand it to all students, because we know one size doesn't fit all, but Sonya's gonna go deeper into what it really means.
Yeah, so what it means is looking at an individual's child's strengths and weaknesses, assessing those children first and seeing where they need the most help academically as well as non-academically. And I think we do have something to celebrate. We need to celebrate Dr. Battle, because she has listened to Nashville PROPEL parents, and she just recently announced at the last board meeting that they're implementing personalized learning and growth plans and a dashboard for parents to be able to see where their children are, so that we can set goals for children, and then we can monitor their progress and put in interventions to help our children to recover from their learning loss.
All right.
So we celebrate her. Thank you, Dr. Bell.
Great. With that, we got to take another quick break. We got a couple of callers on hold. Hang in there, callers. We will get to you right after this break. Stay with us.